Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Invisible Condition. It's not all in your head. My name is Jeff Pearson. I'm your host, and we're doing this show for you. We want everyone out there with Invisible Condition to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you do excuse me, that was timely. You do have a voice, as I choke on mine. You do have a community, and you are not alone. And to that end, of not being alone, I have a guest today, and he's awesome. By the age of 25, Sander, my guest, his testosterone levels, man, that's a tongue twister of a word. Testosterone levels had dropped lower than what would be normal for a 90-year-old, which is not good for somebody who's 25. It's not good for anybody, but it's not good for a 25-year-old. So he just dove into health and longevity. And after seeing many specialists and trying fasting, cold exposure, vegan diet, improving sleep, all the things, could not figure out what the problem was. Realized that not only is the old adage, you are what you eat, true, but it's also true that we are what our food eats. Our food's food, right? That's everybody talks about your food's food, I want my food to be a vegetarian, grass-fed, please. No turbo corn or anything. And so it took him about 6 years to get his health back, but now Sander is married with a beautiful wife and is proud dad of 4 boys. Woo, 4 boys. We might talk about that. That's a brave deal right there. He is also proud to be shifting his commercial dairy farm to be more like in alignment with regenerative agriculture, which I know we're going to talk about as well. So anybody that's out there that's into that, seems to be a thing now. So in the last few years, it's come to the forefront a little bit. So I'm excited to talk about it. Let's bring Sander on the show here. Good morning, Sander. How you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is crazy. From the time that we initially spoke and and today, I completely forgot that you had 4 boys. That is a lot of boys, man. But before we hit record here, you're like, could you hear that? Yeah. Boys are loud, man. Boys are loud.
Boys and a lot of chaos. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got one boy sandwiched between 2 girls. So he's so I don't know about the multiple boys and the brothers and the whole interaction there, and I've got 2 younger sisters myself, so that is a totally foreign world to me. So
yeah, funny enough, because I grew up with 3 brothers, so I don't know. My friends tell me there's something in the well water here. Brings it a lot.
Oh man, that's awesome though. 4 boys. That's pretty sweet. So we'll get into the invisible condition we're going to be talking about that you deal with in a minute, but more we'll figure that out in a second. But tell us a little bit about your love of animals, and you went to vet school and about the family farm.
Absolutely. I've always had deep love for animals. Perfect example is when I was a kid, my I saved up my money and I bought 2 goats. And we bought them from one of our neighbors. We brought them home, and I was just getting to know them. They were pretty scared. They just had a little trailer ride, came to the farm, and I was petting them, trying to calm them down. And the one stuck behind me, jumped out the door and took off. And I was heartbroken. We didn't know where it went, couldn't find it. So what an average kid might do, they might go tell their mom, and they and get comforted by their mother. I went to the barn and I found my favorite cow, and I just laid down with her, and she made me feel better. And it's something that I've always had, is just like, if I spend enough time in the barn, I always come back to the house, to my kids, to my wife, happy as can be. I just love being with animals. So I've always known that I want to do something working with animals, and what that would be, I wasn't 100% sure. I always thought maybe I'd be a chicken farmer because I had some pet chickens as a kid. Then I wanted to be a dairy farmer, and then I thought, well, what about veterinary medicine? So I was like, oh shoot, I get my grades up, play a little harder,
Yeah.
a little more serious, and I did that. Went to University of Guelph, and I got the grades. I wrote the MCATs. I did my application. From university, you got to apply to vet school, so I did all that, and I was ready to apply, and I changed my mind. I was like, you know what? I spoke with a couple of vets, and I realized I could work more with animals as a farmer than I could as a veterinarian, because as a veterinarian, you got to speak with the pet owners, or the owners of the farm animals, and you got to visit with them and explain things with them. It's only maybe half your job actually working with the animals.
Mm.
So that was the reason for my decision. And I came home to the farm, never looked back, never regretted it. And then that was 2010, 2014, 15 is when we built the new dairy barn, the new dairy facility.
Nice.
It's something that I desperately wanted to do for that whole time I was at home farming, because I had all sorts of ideas, lots of plans of how I could do things better than my dad did, and improve the lives of these farm animals, make them more comfortable, make them happier and stuff like that. And as much as I tried, I couldn't get over the fact that we had an old barn that was poorly designed. It was one of the first freestyle barns built in Ontario.
Oh, jeez.
So we finally moved to the new dairy facility, and I was ecstatic because the health of the cows improved. But ironically, at that same time, that's when my health started to slip. It's almost like that buildup of stress and pressure of struggling with unhealthy animals just finally gave out. And then I never spent enough time focusing on my own health, never really prioritized my sleep. And then, my own health started to slip. And that's when I tried absolutely everything on the sun. It was a real inflection point in my life, where I was like, before it's all go get it and work hard and be tough and like lots of grit and spit and all that kind of stuff. But then after that, I really started to realize that I'm missing something in my life. And that's when I really started to develop a softer part of my personality, the vulnerability, and really focusing on myself as a whole, and add things like exercise in and all that kind of stuff. And then, it was a long journey. It was long. It was hard. It was frustrating. Didn't get a lot of encouragement from the medical community. I was told that I just needed to accept my condition and move on and just deal with it. And so I was in that time, I was questioning the healthcare system. I was questioning my own choices, and I also questioned how we farmed. And I was really looking for ways that I could continue to improve the lives of our farm animals, which led me to discover regenerative agriculture, which was just starting to make waves around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so now like you said, I got my family, and now I also have some pasture turkeys that we're raising, and grass-fed beef. We're really trying to move towards that regenerative agriculture part, but I'm still trying to build a customer base and the know-how, and then the goal is to transition our whole dairy farm and the whole farm over to regenerative practices.
Nice. Well, I tell you what, man, that is huge, and we don't see a lot of that here, because you mentioned did you say Ontario?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that what you said? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so we have a little bit of, I mean, the governmental structure and the food and, you know, all the different stuff that the, you know, regulations and all that are different, probably in Canada, and might even vary by province, but definitely different from the US. I mean, so you know, that'll be interesting to get into too. But I tell you what, the one thing I wanted to ask you about, is because we kind of glossed over it in the intro, but I definitely want to dive into it because this is something that surprised me when I heard it, when you told me. But in your bio, you said you're one of those health issues that started to crop up was that you discovered that your testosterone levels had dropped to a lower level than that would be typical in a 90-year-old at the age of 25.
That's right. It was single digits. And the funny part of it, I went to our family doctor and I was like, I feel terrible. I feel weak. I have low energy. My body aches. It hurts to walk. I can't even run anymore. It's just like just getting through the day because I have a physical job. Just getting through the day took all of the motivation I could muster just to make it through. And all the time tired. If I slept more than 15 minutes, I'd fall asleep. It was, and then it's not only that, because your hormones affects your entire body. So I had a long list of small little ailments that didn't really make sense. They don't really seem to correlate. It's just little bits of everything. Like my immune system wasn't working properly, just cold fingers. I don't know. The list goes on and on and on. Small little things that if I tell them to a doctor, there's like, that's just random.
Hypochondriac.
Well,
right?
Yeah, but then I went to the doctor and was like, I don't know, I think there's something wrong. And he's like, maybe my testosterone is low. I brought the suggestion, and he just had a look at me. He wanted me to take my shirt off. He said, oh, you got some muscle mass, you got some body hair, you're good. It's like,
yeah,
that's it. So I was like, I insisted, like I want to check. So I had to pay it out of pocket. Normally in Canada we have free healthcare, but not if it's not approved by the doctor. So I paid for my testosterone levels to be tested, and sure enough, it was in the single digits. It was lower than low.
And so for somebody, you said you were 25 at the time?
Yeah.
Okay, so what should a typical healthy 25-year-old's testosterone levels be?
It depends on how you like the units. So so like I think the units in the States are different than the units that we typically see in Canada. But I've heard anywhere from like 200 to 400 to be normal.
And you were in single digits.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a problem. Yeah. So the doctor tested you, came back with that result, and then did you have a nice little "I told you so" with the doc after you? Say, "Hey, what I told you."
Yeah. So then from that point on, I was bouncing from doctor to doctor, and they were like, "This isn't really my specialty. You gotta go to the next guy." The next guy. So bouncing around, and then eventually I found a doctor that was specialized in male hormones. And he told me I had idiosyncratic hypogonadism, which is just a fancy way of saying your testosterone is low and we don't know why.
Well, it sounds fancier when you say it like that. Yeah. Idiopathic hypogonadism. That's a lot more technical sounding than we have no clue what's going on. So right. Maybe they do that with a lot of them. That's maybe the harder it is to pronounce, the less that maybe the more confused they were what was going on. I don't know. Maybe we're onto something there. But okay, so what are some of the misconceptions about that? Like, okay, so you have low testosterone. I mean, let's not go there yet. First of all, what do you do with that? Like now you find that out. What do you do with that? Like, how do you get back to normal levels?
Well, at that time, it was just an awful lot of testing. They were testing me for every sort of rare genetic condition you could imagine. Yeah. They were scanning me for maybe some tumors or cancers. They were looking for all sorts of stuff. So it was just years of just maybe this, maybe that. Like, oh, we found something in an MRI. Maybe that's a tumor. Maybe it's not. It's just a blip on the MRI scan. It's like, ooh, that's a breath of a relief. Like, dodged a bullet there. Didn't have to get that removed or anything like that. But then it's like, but then what is it? Like, I'd almost rather it be a tumor so I know what it is and then we could deal with it. So it's
just land on something already. Yeah.
So I don't know. I started looking other elsewhere. I was looking on the internet. I went to a naturopath. They said, "Oh, your B12 is low. You're sensitive to different kind of foods." And it's like, yeah, but that's not really enough to get rid of my testosterone. So it's like, and I even talked to my doctor later on just from looking for information on the internet. I found stuff about burnout, and I was like, could I burnt out? Like, and then the doctor said that's not a thing. So, but so it's
okay.
like, so is that wow. I was like, I don't know. I just started optimizing my health. Basically, anything that was like that was about improving your health, I gobbled that up. I was just reaching for straws. I was desperate for information, just anything in my control. So that's when I started like improving my sleep, improving my diet. What's the perfect diet? Yeah. Nobody seems to know. Nobody can agree. So I got to test on myself and figure out what makes my body thrive, what gives me vitality and energy. And exercise was a big thing too, because low testosterone, your muscle mass is going to disappear. So I was like, oh, I got to start exercising. Never did that before. I got a physical job, and anything other than working is a waste of energy because you got to save your energy to get your work done. But so I started exercising. I was focusing on like proper movement patterns, and I realized that like naturally we don't have perfect movement because your body wants to conserve energy, and you put a disproportionate amount of stress in your joints as opposed to your muscles. So I was trying to figure out how do I move properly and then maintain my muscle mass. And I was try some cold exposure because naturally I was terrified of the cold, which is funny enough because I work outside quite a bit. And it got to the point where I was anxious coming outside because I was afraid to get cold, it seemed, but not consciously, just subconsciously. And a lot of it, I just didn't have the energy levels to keep my body heat up. And just part of the being tired and stuff like that, and the poor circulation, my hands would really hurt in the cold. They would something called Raynaud's, where you get a little bit cold and then the blood circulation just shut off. And I was just going from one thing to another. And like I tried the vegan diet because around that time too, like that's when a lot of information on the internet was spewing how the vegan diet is going to solve all of the world's problems. So I tried that too. I'm very open-minded. And so I was a dairy farmer that wasn't consuming dairy or meat products for a while. And in some degrees it helped because I got rid of a lot of the processed foods and I was eating whole foods only. But like I had a hard time getting enough calories in. I got a physical job. And over time, eating this way, I started getting more and more food sensitivities. It was just irritating my gut. My gut health decreased. So that wasn't the silver bullet that was going to bring my health back. But well, a lot of small things helped. Like, of course, I needed to prioritize my sleep. And then, so I did that as much as I could with 4 young boys. But, and then my diet improved. I started eating a lot of the hearty meats, a lot of nutrient dense. It's also much more digestible than a lot of the foods I was eating before. It was just, the nutrients are there. They're in a bioavailable form. They're easy to digest. It didn't upset my stomach. And a lot of little things help. But then for me, anyway, the final straw that brought back my health, that brought back my hormones, was a prolonged fast. It was almost like a reset for my body. And then I did this 2.5-3 day fast, and afterwards, my hormones came back.
Wait, okay. That sounded way too easy. So you did okay, like like I Dream of Genie, right? It's just blink, and you're back. 3 days. You did a 3-day fast. Is that what you said?
Right. That's right. Yeah, just water.
3 days. That was it. Okay. Yeah. So you just said, all right, body, that's enough for 3 days. We're not going to eat anything. And you ate nothing for 3 days. And then magically after the 3 days, your testosterone levels started to rise.
That's right.
How do you explain that? That's crazy. Actually, wait a second. Hold on. Don't answer that yet. We're going to we're gonna break for a commercial real quick. I want to hear the answer to that on the other side of the break though. So don't go anywhere, anybody. We're gonna come right back. We're gonna go to a commercial because I want that answer to that question because that just sounds way too simple. But we're gonna figure it out after the break. Don't go anywhere, and we will see you in just a couple minutes.
Are you a change agent? You're going to love the Superpowers for Good show. I'm Devin Thorpe. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 11 Eastern, I host an inspiring changemaker on Achieve TV. Join us right here on E360 TV.
All right. Okay. We're back. We were talking about all these health problems that you were having, all the things you were having with the testosterone levels and seeing all these doctors and them telling you all these crazy things and sending you all over Canada to get all these opinions. And then you said, you know what? I'm just going to do a 3-day fast. And then because you figured out it was a testosterone, your testosterone levels were way, way low, and then which is not normal. But then you said, well, how do we fix this? You went on a 3-day fast, and then there has to be more to it than that. And then you say it just your testosterone levels started rising. It was just like your body just needed a hard reset or something, or what was going on there?
Well, to be fair, that point was after years and years of incremental improvements. So like they gave me hormone therapy. I felt a little bit better. I took some B12. I felt a little bit better. I exercised, felt a little bit better. And I improved my diet, lots of healthy, nutrient-dense foods, and I felt a little bit better. And I was hyper focused and very, very consistent and just doing all the things I needed to do to be healthy. And never, even like it was always incremental improvements, but it never got to the point where my hormones improved. So I was always still just tired and sleepy and achy and sore. And I was on my wit's end, and it was a 6-year process. It took 6 years of being super focused on my health and doing everything I could possibly think of under the sun. Everything that people said, you got to do this to be healthy. I did it. I tried it. And I stacked all those healthy habits, and still it never improved. Like my hormones, I could never produce my own hormones. And so then I never thought to try a fast because I have a physical job. Growing up, I'm 6 feet tall. I had lots of growth spurts. Like I gotta eat. I never really went more than 6 hours without eating. And I think, and I think it literally was, like you said, a hard reset. It was basically when you're fasting, you go to autophagy and your body eats itself. And the first things it eats are the senescent cells, the broken down products, all the toxins, stuff like that. It gets rid of that first. And then that process was the permission that my body needed to say, we're okay now, we can relax. And like to listen to your body when it says it's tired. It's a hard lesson that I failed to learn. But yeah, so I think like, because I never listened to my body when I was tired and I needed to recover and I needed to take it easy, I always pushed through. That's when my body needed to take it increase the intensity and like get rid of my hormones and make me slow down, make me tired. And then after 6 years, it finally got to the point where like, okay, he gets it. It's and then yeah, it was just at that point, I felt stronger. And I was like, something's different. Like it's my body hurt less, and it's like I have more energy. I'm less sleepy. I'm not falling asleep all the time. It's just like, so I had it tested, and sure enough, I was at normal levels, and I wasn't taking the testosterone.
Okay, so it wasn't just a poof, it's all fixed. It was, you spent years improving, incrementally improving all these other areas because you couldn't figure out what else it was. So you just started, and sound like all those built on each other, right? And in a good way. And then that fast was like, okay, this is the last thing we're doing, guys. This is the last straw. And that was what your body needed to like push you over the edge and start producing that again, right? That makes more sense to me. That actually does it. That path seems a lot more logical to me. So that's amazing, though. I'm sorry you had to go through 6 years, man. That's a long time. Good Lord.
A very long time, but and not that I was going to talk about it, but when I did dig into like the space of people that talk about burnout, they do typically talk about 4, 5, 6 years as far as what it took for their hormones to come back too. And some people say thyroid hormones and stuff like that, but it's like, yeah, like it gave me hope when I heard of other stories. Like, I'm not sure if you ever heard of David Goggins, but that guy's insane.
Yeah.
And
I've heard the name before. Yeah.
Yeah. He, an ex-Navy SEAL that it basically has built a name for himself for being the toughest man on earth. And he actually pushes by through the ringer with all these ultra marathons and multi-day runs and stuff like that. But like, he talked about how he burnt out and it took him 5 years to recover. And I was like, maybe I can still get better. And yeah, now looking back, it's I still got to pinch myself sometimes because it affected every aspect of my life. And not surprisingly too, this like my relationship with my wife and stuff like that too, and this energy levels to be there for my kids and the amount of effort I can put into my job and my career, like it affects everything.
It's like a new start, man. It's awesome.
That's right.
That's phenomenal. Well, I'm just I got to throw this out here to the audience that's watching. If anybody has questions, if anybody has been in that boat and go, oh my God, why am I so tired all the time? Why is it not? Our medical system is kind of weird too in some ways. And so if you want something tested, that's outside the norm, you might have to pony up for it, but sometimes it's worth it. So if you think that there's something going on, get tested for whatever you need to get tested for to make yourself feel better about where you are, but if you have questions, this is the guy right here. I mean, he's been through it. So if you have questions, ask Sander. And we're going to have, your website. Does your website, I'll put that QR code up here now. Does your website have a way for people to reach out to you? Like if they said, I want to ask you a question, could they do that through the website?
We have the info@moraleats.com. And that's the contact way to contact us. And I read all those emails myself. So yes, if people have questions, they can email me through that email address. It's on
info@moraleats. Okay, is that right?
That's it. Yep.
There it is. All right, guys, there it is. No excuses. If you have questions, that's where you do it. I'm going to just do a little different, and we're going to just put it there. There we go. Now it'll just be there. All right. So, okay. Now you're back. You feel like you're a new man. You can do all this cool stuff now. You're like, your strength is back. Your endurance is back. You can hang out with your kids. You can be with your wife. You can work. You can do all the things. So now I mean, the QR code that we're going to put up in a little bit is for your regenerative farming, kind of the website that you have that talks about that. Tell us a little more about that, because that's what you've been trying to do all these years and you just couldn't. And now that you've got your strength back, now you're like, all right, here we go, hit the ground running, let's do it. Right. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I've realized that you overcome adversity, and realize it is possible to have massive dreams and have them come true. And my health, of course, is a huge dream, because you can have all the dreams that you want in the world, but as soon as you lose your health, you only have one. But now that's behind me, I realize the power of consistency and the power of hard work and working towards things for years and years. And what the dream is for our farm is to find a way to improve animal welfare. That's really the main goal of Moral Eats, is to improve the lives of farm animals. And the most powerful way to do that is to supply and demand, is to show people like that there's demand for these products. And that's how you can really create change in agriculture, because then other farmers can then see that demand. They can see where the consumer is putting the dollar, their votes. And
right.
And then you can also have those farmers can then start producing food that same way, and they can see your farm thriving, and then they can look at their neighbors and stuff like that and say like, well, what are you up to? What are you doing? How's this working for you? And so that's the dream of Moral Eats, and it's a lofty dream. I want to have, it can have the potential of having a massive impact, and it starts with our farm, but it can grow much beyond that, to the point where we can have a massive impact on agriculture itself, the welfare of animals, but also by promoting regenerative agriculture practices.
So just out of curiosity, because I know Canada's got, I mean, I guess I don't know, but I can't imagine we have the same practices in that area in the US than you do. I mean, US and Canada, just like US and anywhere else in the world, you know, everybody's got a little different policy, a little bit different practice for different things. And agriculture and farming is definitely something that we do a little worse than other places in some areas, shall we say. I'm putting that gently. We have I feel like we have gotten a little bit slack on some of that stuff, and so I'm just wondering how are you gonna, I know you want your message to go far and wide, and I know you like regenerative farming and ethical, you know, with the animals and all that. How's that going to work internationally? Like, are you thinking just Canada, or are you thinking like everywhere?
Now it starts close to home, of course,
Sure.
but then it starts with our farm. But it could be the brand Moral Eats itself.
Yeah.
Finding producers in the States and having those producers supply Moral Eats and growing towards the States. But it could be much bigger than that. I make content all the time on social media, a lot of short clips and stuff like that, showing what we're doing and stuff like that. And farmers can learn from that, and they can see the demand and they can see the support, and they'll try things themselves. They'll copy some of, like, I don't hold back secrets. I show the things that I'm trying to do to improve welfare. Things like on our commercial dairy farm, having the mother dairy cows raise their own calf up until weaning. And I'm sharing a lot of lessons that I learned, and the do's and don'ts, and what worked and what didn't. And I'm sharing all those on social media. So it could be directly through our brand, but it could be much bigger than that. And it could be just farms adopting small practices here and there, or even trying to build their own brand and consume or sell their products direct to consumers. And that's really where the magic happens, is when the consumer builds a relationship with an actual farmer and buys product directly from a farmer. That's when you can right. Really have the food security. You know how it's produced. You build that relationship. You know the farmer. You know his values and how he's raising animals, and that's the best way.
I mean, my sister. I have two younger sisters, and they both live in Oregon, and one of them lives in Bend, and she has She has I've heard of this before, but I was like, how do you do that? She actually owns a portion of a cow.
Yeah.
At a dairy farm, and then they get raw milk, like raw cow's milk.
Love it.
And then so they'll milk the cows and then put it in a little, like in a storage locker or whatever for them, and then they go pick it up or whatever. But they don't pay for the milk; they pay for the cow, because in Oregon and in Colorado and a few other states in the country, for some reason, there's like regulations against that. Like we're so confused with food around here. I mean, I don't understand why they're putting regulations on stuff as dumb as milk, but
Yeah,
it is, that stuff is amazing. That raw milk is absolutely delicious. And so I would love to do that here, but I'm like, how do you even? So all I'm saying is, the more research you do, and the more looking into it you do, and the more natural you go, and the more, I mean, just do your homework, everybody. And because it, I mean, not to mention it tastes better, and it's probably better for you. It's better for the animal too, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it's better to have them doing stuff in a much more open environment and free range and all that kind of stuff, than packing them into a warehouse or something. I don't know. I'm not the expert here, but what do you mean by, explain that a little bit? Like, more, what do you mean by regenerative?
That's right. So put very simply, regenerative agriculture is simply when you're farming in a way to maximize the soil health. To add a layer of complexity there, what you're really trying to do is have a diverse ecosystem of microorganisms in the soil. So it's not just lifeless dirt. It's a thriving food chain, a complex food chain, where you have bacteria, fungi, protozoa, you have nematodes like our worms, and our arthropods, our insects, and they're eating each other. And it's this complex food chain. And when you have plants growing in soil with this complex food chain, what the plant can do is it can excrete sugars into the soil and trade those sugars for nutrients. It can ask the microorganisms in the soil for nutrients, so that you don't need to fertilize. And the microorganisms then go into the soil and they mine these minerals and these nutrients from the rocks and from the sand and the silt, and they trade it for sugars. That's their lifeblood. They need those sugars to as energy and food. So they make that trade, and it's a beautiful give and take with these microorganisms. The problem is those microorganisms, especially the fungi, and a keystone species is the mycorrhizal fungi, which are long filaments that burrow into the root of the plant and reach out into the soil and transport the minerals and the sugars to all the microorganisms in the soil.
Jeez.
And those mycorrhizal fungi especially die off so easy. As soon as you drive over it with a piece of heavy equipment or spray it with a herbicide or a pesticide, it doesn't matter what you do, they're gone.
Yeah.
Then the plant no longer is able to build this relationship with these microorganisms. It can't trade sugars for nutrients, and now you are forced to fertilize, and you're forced to use herbicides and pesticides. It's an addiction. My commercial farm is addicted to using fertilizers, and I had to lean on these regenerative agriculture practices to get over this addiction and get to the point where that we have a healthy enough soil where the plant can get nutrients the way it naturally would. And the end result of this ultimately is the plant gets the nutrients that you're fertilized for, but you can never fertilize for every single nutrient, every micronutrient that you can find in the soil. So you end up with food that's less nutrient dense. And it's not just the vitamins and the minerals that you're lacking in this crop. It's also the defense chemicals from the fungi, and so then now the plant is vulnerable to fungal infection and pesticides, insect infection and stuff like that. So there you go. Now you got to spray fungicides, you got to spray pesticides, and the crazy thing is, like, why this matters to us is these nutrients make their way up the food chain ultimately onto our plate, to the point where if you're getting food from these regeneratively raised products, you're getting phytonutrients, nutrients that originated from the plant, but also from the fungus and from the bacteria and the organisms in the soil. And you're eating that and you get those benefits.
See, and a lot of people hear the word fungus and bacteria and go, no, back off, no, kill all that off. That's why you use pesticide and stuff, because you want to kill all that, but that's not true. It's like bacteria in your gut, right? That bacteria is good. That is supposed to be there. Don't kill it off. Don't compromise that bacteria in your gut, because that helps you, And so I feel like our education system around food, just in general, I don't care if you're in Canada, the US, or anywhere else, I feel like there's very few places that actually get it anymore, because it's so commercialized that people are just not thinking about it, and they're just like, well, how much can we produce for the least amount of money, and so, but I have a question though. You said something about when you made the example of like rolling over the field with like a wheel, like a tractor or something. So you're saying you shouldn't use machines to harvest, or what? Don't you have to use some things like that, some mechanical devices to do some of the harvesting, or in regenerative farming, is it all by hand? What happened? How are you doing there?
You definitely take a step back to some of the older ways and techniques of farming when you're moving towards regenerative agriculture. And
Okay.
it depends very much on what you're producing. Typically, what you see with regenerative agriculture is a lot of grazing, a lot of pastured animals.
Yeah.
And the reason is that there's 5 principles of soil health that you need to follow to improve the health of the soil. And that is, you need the biodiversity of animals, plants, and microorganisms. You need to minimize disturbance, like I said, the sprays and the wheels. You want to have living roots all year round under the soil. You need armor on the soil, and you need animal impact. And what you find is when you're grazing animals is you naturally follow these 5 principles without even trying. So it's really easy. That's what you typically see when you're hearing or learning about things in the regenerative space. But you can apply these 5 principles to fruit production, vegetable production, row crops. It just takes a lot more intention and a lot more knowledge. So yes, and things like, if you want to do things like row crops and do it in a way that's cost effective, so the consumer actually has a product that they're willing to buy, it's not absurdly expensive because you got a farmer with a scythe trying to grab all the wheat.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. You got to have a machine for some of it, don't you? You can't.
Right. That's right. So there's workarounds, and I'm working on developing these workarounds as well. Like, for example, I'm making a very potent compost. And this compost is I'm doing it in a way that's 0 turn. You don't disturb the pile, because if you disturb it, the fungus dies. And it has to stay oxygenated. You have to have pipes in there that allow oxygen in throughout the compost pile. And what I'm left with is a very diverse and a very concentrated compost with lots of microorganisms. I'm not creating or developing this compost for the fertilizer benefit. I'm developing it for the microorganisms. And then when it's mature, I'm going to make a tea from it. I'm going to soak the compost into water, and then I can spray this tea, which is just, I can spray the microorganisms, and I can immediately kickstart the diversity that I was talking about earlier. So when you are forced for economical reasons to drive over this piece of farmland with a big piece of equipment so you can have cost-effective food, you do some damage. But then with something like this compost tea, you can then revitalize and kickstart that diversity again that you've damaged out of necessity.
Wow. Okay. All right. I got it. That's really cool. It's like you've thought this through. My God, this is crazy. I'm like, my mind is like blown right now. That's so cool. Because there are so many places that I feel like there's so many places that almost get it, but they're not doing, but not quite. And so it's still,
nail with the hammer there. That's the problem. There's so much promotion like from the government back too. Like you got cover crops and stuff like that. Like, yeah, cover crops are great, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. And then the farmer tries it and they're like, it cost me a lot of money. I got to plant the cover crop. What's the benefit? I'm not making more money. And then he stops.
Yeah.
You gotta get all the pieces together. And that's the challenge. And that's what I'm trying to figure out on the commercial side of our farm. But I'm also like saying like before, like I'm also right away on a smaller scale, I'm doing the pasture turkeys, I'm doing the grass-fed beef, I'm mimicking the natural ways that wild birds used to follow the massive herds of bison, and they have a synergy. They complement each other really well, and I'm copying that. I'm learning from nature, and I have our pasture turkeys following behind our grass-fed beef, which are moved every single day, and that movement is critical.
Yes.
And it's like, and if you have continual grazing, you don't get the same benefit of improving the health, despite the fact that you have animals on pasture, because that grass needs to rest in order to regrow, build that root mass, and below ground, but also the plant above ground. And then you can come back and you can graze it again, because while it's growing, that's the carbon, that's the that's where all the soil health comes from. All the food for the microorganisms comes from that carbon. And that carbon originates from the atmosphere. That's CO2, C, carbon, and 2 oxygen. It's being pulled by the plant into the soil, and it's being stored there. And that's the real magic with the environmental benefits of regenerative agriculture.
And so, not to ask a dumb question or anything, but if more people, if this were wider spread, widespread, more, I'm trying to think of the best word for that, more widespread, there it is. If this was more common, more widespread, just not even just in North America, but everywhere, I feel like this is kind of a dumb question, so I kind of know what the answer is, I think, but if we were to practice more of these types of practices in our food production and in our food growth, would there be probably potentially, I mean, I'm not a doctor, neither are you, but could there be the potential there for less disease in general, like less conditions, less things that are infecting people? And I mean, it seems like if there's so much, if the more natural you get your food, that's like one layer you take away of risk of contracting some of these conditions,
Yeah, there's 2 major roads that we can go down for the reason why farming this way with regenerative practices will absolutely help with a lot of these invisible conditions. One of them is the microorganism, the biodiversity, the microbiome. We are ourselves, we are 2/3 bacteria, and a microbiome is super important. Like we have a crazy amount of bacteria and diversity, or we should anyway. But a lack of that microbiome in our gut and our skin and everywhere else is, in my opinion, a root cause of a lot of these autoimmune issues. There's a lot of these, we don't have the diversity to be able to handle some of the foods that we're eating now. And that comes from like a obsession with sterility, with hand sanitizers and all that kind of stuff, and packaged foods. But it also comes back to the fact that the food that's being produced is also sterile. There's not the microbiome in the soil, so there's not the healthy microbiome in the food. So and you should be worried about that, because if there's devoid of life, as soon there's that void wants to be filled. And the bacteria that grows the quickest are things like our E. coli's, things that cause infections and makes us sick. So like if you don't have a healthy microbiome, if you don't have a healthy diversity of organisms on our food, well then it's vulnerable to growing disease-causing microorganisms. And then that's like, and like you said, like pasteurized milk is one example. Like raw milk doesn't spoil, it just turns into kefir or yogurt and stuff like that, or cottage cheese. But if you set out pasteurized milk and let that sit for several days, it's not safe to drink anymore.
No.
It's growing unhealthy bacteria. It doesn't have that healthy bacteria population already to out-compete the disease-causing bacteria. And like those two, our obsession with sterility and also the lack of a healthy diversity of microbes on our food combines, I think, to make us vulnerable to a lot of these autoimmune issues. But the second way that regenerative agriculture is amazing for improving our health and preventing a lot of disease is just the nutrient density of regenerative agriculture. Our bodies are not capable of fighting off all these issues and diseases if we don't have the building blocks, those nutrients that our body wants. So like it makes us stronger and more vitality, just like and healthier. Just like the animals eating the food raised on healthy soil is healthy. The animal is healthier, the plant is healthier, the soil is healthier, and now we're healthier.
Yes. I love that. That's perfect. Yeah, no, exactly. It's so simple, but it's not easy, you know?
So true.
If it were as easy as it is simple, we would all be much healthier, I think. But yeah, oh man. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that, not having to refrigerate as much stuff when it's got all those nutrients and kind of that some of that bacterial properties in there, because it's more stable, you know. Right. It doesn't have to it's not afraid to just sit on the counter or whatever.
The farmer's breakfast is like, it's always been just the milk that you leave and sit out from the day or a couple days before, and then you got your farmer's breakfast. It's just cottage cheese.
There you go. Yeah, and it's perfectly fine. Yeah. But you let a gallon of milk or whatever sit out for a few days now, and the smell could wake the neighbors. You know. Sure. So yeah, that's oh man, that's unbelievable. Well, I tell you what, man, I feel like we could go for 2 more hours, but we are about a minute from being out of time, and this has been incredibly informative and educational for me, because I'm just a city boy that eats, my version of what you're talking about is being a perimeter shopper at the store, and not buying stuff in the aisles. That's as good as I can do right now. There's only so much you can do, at some point, but in the last couple of minutes here, what can you tell us as far as, like, is there any last thing that you want to give us, like last little piece of advice?
I would like to say that it's so easy to overcomplicate things and to stress out about all of those little details, sweat the small stuff, and make where you're getting food from. But like, it's like what you said and what you're already doing is just take that simple first step. Shop that perimeter of the grocery store. That's already huge when you're not having all this packaged food. You're not having all the canned and food preservatives and things like that. That's a huge first step. And then from there, it's like, okay, now how do I make sure the whole foods that I am eating, be as nutrient dense as possible? And that's the next step. And that's when you try to source a farmer, and maybe you can start with things like those companies that source food for you, like your True Local that we have in Canada, or Fresh Box and stuff like that, or you can go to your farmer's market, and then eventually go to those places where you're actually trying to build a relationship with an actual farmer and support him in the way he's raising foods, and make your voice heard by buying the products that are raised in the way that you believe they should be raised.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's true. Put your money where your mouth is, right?
Right.
Yeah, if you start buying from other places and not funding all the other crazy stuff going on, then yeah, they'll eventually. I know it's a big bite to bite off, but eventually they'll have to listen. So
That's
yeah,
right.
that's unbelievable. And anything that can improve health, that's, I mean, that it's so big. It's such a big topic. It's not just food. It's about health too. So, which we don't really have time to get into, but maybe next time, maybe we come back and we'll try this again and talk about a different aspect of it. But for today, unfortunately, we're out of time. But man, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it, Sandra. And it's just great to hear it from somebody who's doing it and just kicking butt doing it. So thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Appreciate it. All right, guys, this is crazy. That just blew my mind. I love it. It's awesome. All right, here we go, guys. If you have an episode that you have watched well, first of all, thank you. If you are somebody that is one of our regular, viewers that love what we're doing, thank you for being here. And if you're new, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you too. Come back next time. Come back every time. If you find an episode that you really like, share it. It's probably going to be somebody else's favorite too. So until next time, I will just say have an amazing day and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.